His name is Barry Allen, and he's the fastest man alive. And I can't believe that it took us over 225 episodes to do a geek history lesson on him. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Lightning Bolt Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you, dear friend, have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or speedster from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour. And like Jason alluded to in the intro, we're finally getting around to a, I'm assuming, heavily requested, very popular character.
You are actually completely wrong on that.
Oh, damn.
If you know anything about our podcast, we keep a giant... We have a long Google Doc. I don't know how many pages long it is. It's really long.
There are 350 plus characters currently requested.
Yes. And so every time you request somebody at GHL Podcast on Twitter and Facebook, facebook.com/Geek History.
That is true.
Lesson. Is that right?
Yep.
Those are the two places to do it. Not our personal Twitters, please. Thank you.
Because they'll go lost.
Because we won't find them there. But no. There is only one person who ever requested Barry Allen, the Flash.
Blasphemy.
And that person is Grod Frankenstein.
Oh, yes. I recognize that username. That is from the Tumblr days. That was from our pre-official website days.
So well done, Grod Frankenstein.
Bless you.
Well
Thank
done.
you for the request.
We're, of course, talking about Barry Allen, the Flash, because Flash Season 5 is zooming back into our lives. And we thought this was the best time to talk about one of the founding members of the Justice League. I'm talking about this right off the top of my head, and it's all right if you don't remember, and we're not going to Google it. Have we done every founding member of the Justice League now?
No way. We haven't done
Martian Manhunter, have we?
Yes, I taught it.
Okay.
We haven't done Aquaman.
Oh,
We might be saving it for a giant movie coming out.
My man.
I will also...
Do you get that reference?
That's a Justice League reference.
There you go.
I would also counter that it depends on which, do you mean like the original Justice League?
Well,
Which founding Justice Leaguers are you talking? Because we haven't, I guess we did do Hawkman.
No. Hawkman is not a founding member of the Justice League. He's a founding member of the Justice Society. In my head, I consider...
You going the Big Seven?
The Big Seven are the founding seven. But I also include Black Canary in that list.
Then I think Aquaman might be the only one that we haven't done.
Yeah, I think it might be Aquaman. Yeah. Well done,
That's my head getting blown off.
Yes. You know what else will blow off your head? The 10-cent origin.
The 10-cent origin is the first part of the podcast that I picked the cue up on this week, where Jason is going to lay down all the basic creators and things that you need to know in case you go to a cool Justice League themed cocktail party and someone's like, who's this Barry Allen guy?
My woman. Okay.
Never say that to someone.
There's another Justice League reference for you. Okay. The 10-cent origin for Barry Allen is, of course, he is a DC Comics character. His first appearance was in Showcase number 4 in October of 1956. He was created by Robert Kniger. I've never heard this name said out loud. But more importantly, Carmine Infantino.
Classic.
His full name is Bartholomew Henry Allen. That is his real name.
Just like on the television.
He is, of course, a metahuman. His place of origin is Central City. His team affiliations are the Justice League. He has partnerships with several people. Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, Jesse Chambers, Kid Flash, Max Mercury, Wally West. Other partner heroes are Green Lantern and all of the Justice League. And his abilities are he has insane superhuman speed, agility, stamina, electrokinesis, body vibration to phase through objects, and time travel.
Oh boy, it's not like he loves that.
All right, let's go through the meet cute now, Ashley.
Yes, and the meet cute is a term that we stole from romantic comedy writing, where we tell you where we first meeted a character and how cute it was.
Ashley, I'm very curious about this. Let's talk about comic book Barry Allen. This is what, of course, this whole lesson is going to be about comic book Barry Allen.
Yeah.
Where did you meet Barry Allen in the comic books? Because I think when you started reading comic books, he was dead.
He was, and I'm sure we'll get into that. I haven't read a ton of Barry Allen stories in my life.
Ashley, you're not a real nerd.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I am.
If you've stuck around this podcast for a while, you know that I'm a Bart Allen, Wally West girl. Mm-hmm. I heard a lot about Barry Allen before I ever read Barry Allen stories. And he was first mentioned in a New Teen Titans issue that I read because they referenced their mentors.
Back in the Marv Wolfman run?
Yeah. I used to buy them from quarter bins, guys. And then I paid a lot of money for the Omnibuy to make up for the fact that I read the entire run, probably paying, I don't know, maybe a fifth of the actual value of the books.
Sure.
And Barry Allen was quite a mythical figure at the time. Wally really looks up to him and admires him, and he seems really great. But I was always more of a Titans girl than a Justice League girl, so I didn't read a Barry Allen story until I think I was an adult.
Okay, interesting.
If I'm going to be honest. But he loomed large over Wally West, but I loved Wally so much that I never needed Barry Allen.
Yeah.
Where did you first meet him?
I first met Barry Allen because, of course, he was dead during the May 90s time when I was super getting into the JLA. And my first encounter with the Flash was actually JLA Grant Morrison, Wally West. And he does loom large over Wally West's life. But to be honest, the first place that I caught into him was JLA Year One.
Great book. We talked about a lot here.
I love it. It's one of my favorite Justice League stories of all time. And that was the miniseries they released during the time of the Grant Morrison run, written by Mark Waid, and it's about the origin of the Justice League and Barry Allen as the Flash. To be honest with you, that is the first Barry Allen story I ever read.
Wow.
And again, it's interesting that for being one of the big seven, Barry Allen is unique, that for the current generation of comic book readers, I would say more people probably discover him either through the TV show or somehow through Wally.
Yeah.
Because he was dead for 23 years. We'll get into that.
And Wally is a big part of the animated series.
Yep.
So...
Yeah. All right, so let's move into the History 101.
The main meat of the lesson where Professor Jason's going to tell us everything we need to know about Barry Allen.
Now, Barry Allen and a twin brother were born 2 weeks late to Henry and Nora Allen in the small Midwestern town of Fallville, Iowa.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, we have talked about this twin brother before.
I don't remember.
The brother was pronounced stillborn by Dr. Gilmore. However, in actuality, he had been born healthy, but was given to another family, the Thawnes.
Oh, that's right.
Whose child had died during birth. And that is the last time we are going to talk about that twin brother who is a bad soap opera trope. No, we are done.
I think we have an entire lesson on that.
We don't. But this is, if you're wondering,
we have a Hunter's Element.
If you're wondering what we're talking about, it's of course a feature Flash villain called Cobalt Blue. We talked about him in the Wally West episode because he's a Wally West villain.
Yep, because we did a Wally West episode before a Barry Allen episode. Don't tweet us.
That's right. Now, when Barry was a child, his mother was killed and his father was convicted of the murder. And this drive to prove his father innocent was what gave Barry his strong belief in justice, because young Barry refused to believe that his father was guilty of the crime. You've seen a lot of this in the Flash Season 1 television series. His life basically grounded to a halt because he dedicated himself to finding the real murderer and to finding the motive behind the murder. And because of this led Barry Allen to study forensic scientist, which dedicated himself to solving his mother's case and other innocent people like his father.
Can I interject something here?
Sure.
I really like this.
Okay.
I like this for Barry Allen. I like it for any superhero because the dead parents thing is very tropey. We see it with almost all of them. But I like that Barry manifests it in the real world by becoming a scientist. He's not just a superhero. That's like a thing that happens later and then amplifies his search for justice. But his choice is to be a civilian crusader for justice, not to be Batman. And I like that.
Okay. This is actually a retcon.
I still like it.
We'll talk about it later. I am actually not a fan of it because it makes the Flash a self-fulfilling paradox.
Oh, well, I don't like that. That's fine.
Yeah. But we can talk about that.
But I like it narratively.
We'll get to where it comes actually into the story. After graduating from college, Barry Allen found work with the Central City Police Department as a police scientist. It was later retconned to be a forensic scientist.
Forensics didn't become a thing until the 90s.
And he had a well-known habit for slowness and lateness. However, working late in the lab one night, a rack of chemicals that he was working next to was struck by lightning, and Allen was doused in the chemicals. Unharmed, Allen cleaned up the mess and returned to work, but soon noticed that everyone in the world appeared to be moving much slower than normal, and he realized that it was not the world that had slowed, but himself who had sped up. Now, an avid fan of comic books, especially the comic book adventures of J. Garrick the Flash.
Me too.
Barry decided to follow in his hero's footsteps and fight crime, taking Garrick's superhero name as a form of tribute. Experiments with his powers later revealed that not only was he able to move super fast, he could vibrate his molecules, allowing him to appear invisible and phase through solid objects. So Barry designed a special costume inspired by the Flash comic book that he had read as a kid, and he used a special cold cast polyester that he developed in college, which could be molded into miniature outfits from liquid metal, which when submerged in a special liquid, we're getting nerdy here, became sensitive to hydrogen, expanding on contact with the hydrogen in the air. And when a charge from a battery-powered ring he wore on his finger caused the fabric to release the extra hydrogen and shrink into the ring, he later revised the process, making the fabric sensitive to nitrogen instead, and in fact, creating the costume out of his Flash ring.
I don't know if I actually heard any of that.
That was a long scientific explanation and comic book explanation just to explain how the Flash costume can fit inside a ring.
Hey, I bet we have one scientist who listens to this.
Yes.
Is any of that real science?
It's a lot of hydrogen. Now, there is a thing that is forgotten in many tellings of Barry Allen. The fact is that he is a comic book fan. Mm-hmm. In this telling, the original idea, the Golden Age adventures of the Justice Society of America were the comic books published in Earth 1 because they were the adventures of Earth 2. It was like the idea that these ideas seep through the ether. Mm-hmm. Now, Ashley, would you like to see, because Barry Allen in the comic books doesn't have much of a personality.
Yeah.
Would you like to see the return of Barry Allen, the comic book fan?
I think that would be really interesting. I'd actually love to see it on the television show.
I as well. I too. I too. I don't know what that was with.
That's fine.
Yep.
I think that's a really sweet idea. And I've always loved that the Earth 2 adventures were read on Earth 1. And I would love the idea that it worked in opposition as well. Or even if they were like augmented versions of what actually happened. I think that kind of bleeding over of the universe is like a really sweet way to be meta without sort of, I don't know, hitting us over the head too much.
Yeah. Now, Barry soon began dating Picture News reporter Iris West.
Picture News.
Yep. Whom he met while examining an apparent murder that she was reporting, and she was charmed by his honesty and his stability and his bow tie.
Yeah, he was a little Jimmy Olsen at the beginning.
Then soon came a kid named Wally.
Yay!
During
we love him.
one summer, Iris's nephew Wally came to visit her in Central City, and he was actually a huge Flash fanboy. And he knew that his aunt's boyfriend, was a friend of the Flash. So a meeting was arranged, and the Flash offered to answer all of Wally's questions. So Wally asked how the Flash gained his powers of super speed. The Flash explained the events of what had happened, causing Wally to wish out loud that something like that could happen to him. And the worst wish of all time happened because it just so happened that Barry had happened to set up the chemical cabinet in his lab exactly the same way it had been during the fateful Flash night. And there was a thunderstorm on the afternoon of Wally's visit. And then all of a sudden, almost in an answer to Wally's wish, the freak accident that gave Barry his powers recreated itself exactly and covered Wally in electrically charged chemicals.
An example of too much meta-narrative.
This is a thing where I would say that the Central City Police Department needs to get rid of its damn lightning rod because that is a problem. That is an insane problem. No, in the comic books, there are no skylights. They're on like the 5th floor.
I know,
and it comes in sideways.
Yeah, of all the potential comic book origins, the Flash one is one of my least favorite ones. It's silly.
Now possessing the same powers as the Flash, Wally first donned a smaller sized copy of Barry Allen's Flash costume. It's really odd because he just looks like a tiny person.
Yeah, it's funny. I've read that issue.
And the Picture News headlines dubbed him Kid Flash. Wally's original costume was later transformed into the new yellow and red design because that was a design that Barry was actually thinking about changing to.
I love that design. And even the weird headpiece.
Let me ask you this, Ashley. Is the Kid Flash costume better than the regular Flash costume?
Yes.
Why? The headpiece is dumb.
The headpiece is super dumb. But I'll tell you what I like about it. I like the way they draw Wally's hair in it. Mm-hmm. the latest Incredibles movie ripped it off with Dash, where they draw his hair always waving back. So he always looks like he's in motion, even when he's standing still. And open top headpieces like that or like Gambit are always stupid. And they never work in real life. But I've always really loved this costume. I take issue with the name Kid Flash.
What would you have called him?
I don't know. But there's a moment...
Lightning.
There's a moment in the Jeff Johns Teen Titans run where Impulse changes his name to Kid Flash, and they're like, don't you think Impulse is a better name? Because it is. I don't know. It's very Silver Agey to me, and maybe that's what I don't like about it. I don't think it's aged well.
Sure.
But yes, I do think the costume's better. I have a hard time with a full cowl. If you're trying to obscure your identity, it's truly the best way to go. But I don't like people with big domey heads all the time.
Oh,
like with Batman, it works because you have the ears and stuff like that. But I kind of think Barry looks like he's covered in like a surgeon's glove. I think it's weird. I do.
I think Kid Flash should have a cowl.
You do? You don't?
Yeah.
You're pro regular Flash costume.
Well,
except it makes him look like a weird tiny Barry Allen.
No, I think he should have the yellow costume, but it should be domed over.
Like Reverse Flash?
Like Reverse Flash. It's fun fact, there is a very recent retcon from Joshua Williamson, the current writer of The Flash at the time of this recording, where he did a story where he explained the reason why Eobard Thawne's Flash costume is yellow is because originally Eobard Thawne was a super fan of The Flash, and he built his Reverse Flash costume as yellow because all of Flash's partners have yellow costumes.
Oh, that's cute.
Which I actually was
Good
like,
job, Josh.
I was like, that's a clever retcon,
It is.
which I really like.
See, we like a retcon when it's clever, when you add something.
Well, it's character based. That's why it works.
Cool.
So Barry eventually joined the Justice League. Don't know if you've heard that team.
Yeah.
And-
that little organization.
Yep, and became best friends with Hal Jordan, Green Lantern.
Oh, we did an episode on him.
Eventually, Barry proposed to Iris on a Ferris wheel at the fair because, he learned how to propose in the 1950s.
Was it owned by Ferris
No.
Air?
They don't deal in carnivals.
I'm a pilot.
Only
That was
planes.
a joke.
She accepted, and they were married in spite of the efforts of Professor Zoom. Who is Professor Zoom, Ashley?
Professor Zoom is Barry's nemesis, I guess, arch nemesis. Were you looking for the name?
Yeah.
Hunter Zolomon?
Nope.
Oh, Eobard Thawne.
Yep. There
One
you
of
go.
them. I don't know. They have different names on the TV show.
They have exactly the same names on the TV show as the comic books.
Look.
Professor Zoom is Eobard Thawne, a speedster
right.
from the 25th century who hates Barry Allen. He's Barry Allen's Joker.
Late.
And we were later going to learn Professor Zoom is actually the person who murdered Barry's mama.
Oh, yeah.
So Professor Zoom attempted to foil the ceremony, and actually, after the ceremony, Barry hid his identity from Iris for over a year, although she had known the entire first year of their marriage because he had spoken in his sleep about being the Flash on their honeymoon.
Yeah, I've read that issue too.
Yep. He was worried that the accident had actually made him less human and was worried that his speed powers would not allow them to have children even. And after many tests, they actually found out that they could have children, and then that is when Barry officially revealed his identity to Iris, even though Iris was like, I already know.
Yeah, because of course you would.
Yep.
Even if you don't talk in your sleep. Also, with Flashes, they do like to sometimes give them weird medical scares. During New Teen Titans, there's a whole arc where Wally has cancer and then doesn't anymore.
Yeah, because he outran it.
Kind of.
Yep. Soon, Iris is murdered
That's true.
by Professor Zoom at a masquerade party.
Yep.
Yeah. But, don't worry about Barry because he honestly didn't wait that long. And soon he has a new fiance.
Yeah.
Very quickly, in fact. He begins to date a woman named Fiona Webb. And soon and very quickly, he proposes to her.
Yeah, Barry's one of them commitment types.
Yep. However, on the day that they were supposed to be married, guess who shows up? Not a minister, Professor Zoom. Professor Zoom.
I was going to guess Grodd.
Professor Zoom shows up again because he hates weddings and claims that he would once again kill the wife of the Flash.
Oh my God. I'm just imagining him being like, why are you wasting all this money? Put a down payment on a house.
No, he's more like, I'm going to be your wife, Barry.
Yeah, truly. You don't know what love is.
So Barry chased Professor Zoom across the world, and at the last second before Zoom was going to kill Fiona, Barry snaps Professor Zoom's neck accidentally.
Look, Jason, we all know that only Superman snaps people's necks.
No, Barry Allen did it first, and almost by 30 years.
Wow.
So anybody complaining about the ending of Man of Steel, go complain to Barry Allen in like 1983.
Yeah, it's Barry Allen. Hashtag blame Barry.
Yes. So seeing this murder of seeing two speedsters attempt to murder her and then murder each other sends Fiona into a fit of madness.
Understandable.
And she goes to an insane asylum.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So, Ashley, I want to ask you, let's talk about this Barry Allen murder.
Okay.
Because Barry Allen is not typically a murderer. He's very straight-laced. He follows the rules.
Yeah.
He's
almost a stick in the mud.
He is a stick in the mud. That's a great way to describe him. It is accidental, and in the panel, he is behind Zoom, and he sort of grabs him in a chokehold, and he says, "Not again!" And it's on the again that he pulls in, and that's what snaps Zoom's neck.
So now, he punctures his trachea with his Adam's apple?
Yes. This is a very early 80s storyline. This is a very famous Flash storyline. What do you feel about, in the early 80s, them being like, let's make Barry Allen a murderer? At a wedding.
I'm honestly surprised that this issue doesn't get more attention because it happens right pre the sort of violent turn that we get in the mid-80s.
Yeah, this is, I don't know the exact year. It's somewhere around 82, 83-ish when this happens.
But it's before Dark Knight.
Which is 85.
Because I always think of 1985 as kind of being the turning point into like grittier comics.
It is, because 1985 is Crisis on Infinite Earths, Watchmen.
Speaking of death, yeah.
And Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
All in the same year.
So I'm surprised that this isn't like, we made a joke about Man of Steel, and it is, people are still harping on that.
They still talk about it, yeah.
I'm surprised more people don't harp on this moment in comics because death wasn't as rampant or as permanent.
Heroes didn't really kill...
Bad guys.
Even Wolverine, who was in Chris Claremont's X-Men at the time, it was sort of implied death. But
there's a difference between seeing someone and snapping a character's neck it's on different
panel.
And it's personal.
It's on panel.
I'm surprised they gave this to Barry Allen. I really am. I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
But I am surprised that it happened when it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, Ashley, I have to ask, are you ready for the most bat-crazy trial you've seen this side of a Boston Legal episode? Well, you're welcome for that 2000 reference.
Yes.
All right, now it's time to talk about the trial of the Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Barry is placed on trial for murder in connection with Zoom's death.
Imagine that.
Barry Allen is found guilty because he snapped the dude's neck in front of a giant wedding party.
And on panel, and we all saw it.
When he is told this by a juror, he finds that the juror is actually possessed by a mind from the future.
Oh, yeah.
And that the Reverse Flash, who Barry Allen knows to be dead, brainwashed the jury into this verdict. So the Flash runs away from the trial.
Good for him.
Barry is then attacked by the Reverse Flash somehow and realizes that the answers to this mystery and restoring his good name lie in the future. So the juror that gave him the verdict uses a time device to send them forward. He discovers that Abracadabra, who's a very famous magician-y Flash villain who's actually from the future.
From the future, yeah.
Disguised himself as Reverse Flash to ruin the Flash's good name. Defeating Kadabra, he retreats to the future to be reunited with Iris, having learned in the storyline that Iris's spirit was actually, in fact, drawn to the 30th century and given a new body, and was in fact the mind that was inhabiting the juror and telling him all the information. Now, the final issue of The Flash at this time ends with the Flash and Iris kissing passionately, and the caption, "And they lived happily ever after, ... for a while." And this is in The Flash number 350. Now, Ashley, why is the 30th century important?
The 30th century is important because that's where such great characters as the Legion come from, but also Bart Allen.
Yeah, but the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, by the Legion.
Burt Allen doesn't come around for another decade.
No, but he's important to me.
Sure.
Also, if you've never read this story arc, it is worth reading just to see what they draw the future looking like. And Citizen Abra is a fun time.
Yeah. Also, before the trial of the Flash, I just want to talk about another retcon that was put around this time period in Barry's life. It's somewhere during this time period that the controversial past scenes in Identity Crisis, the Brad Meltzer storyline, happen. And during this, it is revealed that Barry voted to allow Zatanna to edit Dr. Light's mind with 4 of the other members of the Justice League. And they say this is 6 months after Iris's death. So it's between Iris and Fiona.
Yeah.
When Batman discovers what the League was doing, they have Batman's memories edited as well, despite the opposition from Green Arrow. And both Dr. Light and Batman would eventually recover their respective mind wipes, with Dr. Light leading to swear vengeance on all the heroes. Also, I'm going to let you know a thing. After this time, I forgot to mention, in the future time, Iris would later go on to have 2 kids, twins, called Dawn and Dawn Allen. D-O-N and D-A-W-N.
Stupid.
Yep. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happened.
I knew this was going to happen.
And before we get to the first semi-detailed ever talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths ever on this podcast, because usually we just skip past it and say like the Anti-Monitor farted out of universe or whatever.
We talked about it a little bit in Supergirl.
We talked about it, but we're actually going to talk a little bit more about it in Barry Allen because he's very important to the storyline.
Holy smokes.
We first got to talk about our sponsor. Now, today's episode is sponsored by RX Bar.
Yum, 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 yum. I like them a lot.
Okay, right out the gate. RX Bar is a company that makes great bars, nutritional bars, and they make great bars because they apparently went to a grocery store and they couldn't find bars out there. They found all these protein bars that were full of artificial ingredients, fillers, preservatives, and just general BS, as they say it. And actually, most of the time, that stuff's really crappy for you. It's full of sugar. It's full of crap you don't need. And RX Bar, they want to build things the right way, and they want to build bars that have core ingredients that do all the talking with all of them listed in the front of the packages. So RX Bars contains gluten-free, soy-free. I mean, they don't contain, but they are gluten-free. They're soy-free. They're dairy-free. No artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no preservatives, no fillers, and we can promise this, no neck snaps. Now, Ashley and I had a couple of RX bars right before the episode. Ashley, what did we try?
We tried the chocolate sea salt and also the peanut butter chocolate bar.
I like the chocolate sea salt. It actually reminded me of some protein bars that I used to eat when I was in the military, and they were great.
Oh, wild.
But those are probably full of sugar and crap.
Probably they were. I really enjoyed the chocolate peanut butter because they played right into a combo that I enjoy very much.
So if you are interested in RX bars and you want to get 25% off your first order, visit RX Bar, that's rxbar.com/Geek History. It's pretty simple. It's the name of the podcast.
Heck yeah.
And enter the promo code Geek History at checkout. You'll get 25% off, and you can have all the chocolate peanut butter RX bars you want. And we swear to God, there are no neck snaps at rxbar.com/Geek History. Mm-hmm. So thanks to them for supporting the podcast.
Thank you.
All right. It's time. It's time to talk about Crisis on Infinite Earths.
So there were so many
Nope, don't talk about it at all. Do not talk about it at all, because we're going to talk about it because Barry Allen actually participates in the storyline.
I'm going to say it right here. Barry Allen's best thing.
Now, Barry Allen was where when we left him, Ashley? Where is he at?
In the future.
The future where?
The 30th century?
Yes, in the 30th century.
Okay, I was like, I don't know the name of the city. Please don't ask me.
Futuropolis.
Probably.
Now, the 30th century was beginning to fall apart. Natural disasters were occurring despite the technology that had been created to stop them, and reality was tearing apart.
Oh, no.
So Flash returned to the 20th century to warn his fellow heroes. And just as he was about to warn Batman, he was pulled into the antimatter universe by the Anti-Monitor, where Barry Allen was mentally tortured by the Psycho Pirate. Now, just in case anybody doesn't know, Ashley, do you know what the antimatter universe is?
Not really.
Okay, our universe is made up of positive matter.
Yes.
And there is an opposite to that called antimatter.
Oh, this is an actual science thing, too.
Yes, it is real. Antimatter actually exists, or we theorize that it exists.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to say Pro does exist.
Now, do you know who the Anti-Monitor is?
Other than a giant evil bad guy? Not really.
Well, at this time in DC continuity, there was a multiverse, multiple universes at every permutation, and there was a being called a Monitor that monitored or watched that Earth. The Anti-Monitor was
the one from the anti-matter
universe that was, and since there were infinite monitors, there was only one Anti-Monitor. Again, a yin and a yang here. So the Anti-Monitor stole the Flash because he is the only being capable of traveling to other universes at will. So the Anti-Monitor was like, I gotta shut that crap down.
Yeah.
No more of this. But Barry Allen escapes and foils the Anti-Monitor's plan to destroy the Earth with an antimatter cannon, creating a speed vortex to draw the power in. And in the process of this, the process has too much power and becomes too much for his body, and Barry Allen disintegrates and dies.
In issue 7.
And thank you so much for listening. That's it for this episode of Geek History Lesson. Goodbye, everybody.
If we had done this episode in 1998 instead of 2018, you would be right.
Yeah.
That would have been the lesson.
Well, yeah, and we have to continue on the lesson because Barry got up to a lot in the 90s. Do you want to know what he got up to in the 90s?
Yes.
And
is this what death sounds like?
And then he did more of this. And then in 95, he did this.
We're only up to 95?
And then the most important event happened in 1999, and that was... And that's what Barry Allen got up to in the 90s.
Somewhere in the world, Jeff Johns, the back of his head is tingling because you just made fun of Barry Allen in the 90s while he was crusading to bring him back.
In all honesty, there's several different accounts of actually what happened to Barry Allen following his death. And it kind of evolved around a lot of writers in the 90s and the 2000s is basically deciding what worked best for their story.
Yes.
So he was shown in one story to transform into pure electricity and go back in time, becoming the lightning bolt that strikes him and gives him his powers. I kind of like that.
Do you?
Yeah, I sort of like the nice circular nature of that.
You just said earlier that you didn't like him being a self-fulfilling paradox.
But that is meaningful, whereas a self-fulfilling paradox where your mom gets brutally murdered, I think is a little bit different. There was also, during the 90s, an extra-dimensional amnesiac character who showed up in the Marvel Universe and was really implied to be Barry, and he remembered his name something like Buried Allen. So there's that. But then eventually, in Mark Waid's Wally West Flash run, specifically in Terminal Velocity, they introduced the concept of the Speed Force, and it was portrayed as sort of a Valhalla for all speedsters, and Barry was shown in the Speed Force.
I like this one the best.
But actually, when Oliver Queen later died in a feature storyline, he met Barry in an aspect of heaven, and in this heaven, we saw Hal Jordan, Jason Todd, and Barry. And Barry was the one who gave Oliver the tour of heaven.
Jason Todd doesn't believe in God.
That's true.
Don't tweet me.
But he believes in Batman.
But if you're going to go to heaven, that implies a religious belief.
And then Barry Allen finally came back.
Oh, boy.
And right now, because I think we are a respectable news source of podcasts, news source for fake characters and fake comic books and histories.
We never get anything wrong.
I'm going to reveal my bias right now.
Okay.
Before we go any further.
Oh, I do think this is a nice ethical thing to do.
If any character in the DC universe should be a legacy character. And Ashley, what's a legacy character? We actually got asked that question on Twitter very recently. What is a legacy character?
I'm sorry I don't know the user who asked us, but I want to commend him. I do remember it was a gentleman for asking, because he said that he knew it was, and there are no dumb questions, but he's like, I know this is a dumb question. It's not. And I appreciated that he asked and that he was funny. Curious.
It's interesting that we're 228 episodes into Geek History Lesson, and we never thought to explain
what a legacy character is. Yeah, a legacy character is a character that inherits a mantle or a superhero identity from a previous hero. Robin, to becoming Batman. Every Green Lantern, Kid Flash, Impulse, all of the characters that you think of as having
Captain
to
America
grow
now.
up. Yeah, Captain America now. Yeah, there have been 2 Caps.
3.
I meant 2 baby Caps. Yes, there's been 3 Caps. But it's any character that, yes, inherits a mantle. It's a legacy character.
So I think that the Flash being a legacy character is very profound for this reason.
Okay.
He is the first DC character to ever be rebooted. It is the Flash. His appearance, Barry Allen, starts the Silver Age.
Yes, it does.
And I think the story of Wally West and his adventures in the 90s are so much more profound and better than any story Barry Allen had pre-1985.
I will agree with that 100%.
And the idea of... Now, I'm not saying that Wally West should probably still be Flash now. Like, say they never brought Barry back. You know, at this point, I almost think like it should have probably gone to Bart Allen. And then Wally's gone now. But the idea that the Flash is always this legacy that the character... Because Barry Allen was trying to live up to Jay Garrick.
Yeah.
Wally West trying to live up to Barry Allen. Bart Allen trying to live up to Wally West. And again, when they brought Barry Allen back, he had been dead for 23 years.
Yeah.
23
when they brought him back,
years.
He had been dead for my entire lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, he died before I was born.
Exactly.
And had always been dead. Like, there's a whole generation...
where Wally West is their Flash.
Wally West, and a lot of it has to do with the Justice League cartoon because the reach of that cartoon is so much more than any of these comics. But if there was... I'll agree with you on this, and I'll show my bias as well. But I agree, if there was any legacy character where we should never have gone backward... Because I'm okay with Bruce Wayne becoming Batman after Dick Grayson, like it reverting back.
Yeah.
I'm okay with Clark Kent coming back to be Superman after the reign of the Supermen. If there's any character who should have never taken their mantle back, it's probably Barry Allen.
Well, it goes back to that original question of, was anybody asking for Barry Allen to come back besides Jeff Johns? Was anybody asking for that?
And look, I'm sure a very nice human is going to tell us on Twitter that they were. I don't think so. I come down on the same side of this argument that I come down on Identity Crisis. No one cared about Sue Dibney and no one was upset about it until Identity Crisis. Yeah. And nobody cared about Barry Allen until the show started. And now everyone's glad that they brought him back.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Even though the Flash on the TV show acts more like Wally West than he did Barry Allen.
But that's another discussion.
Exactly. It's a completely different discussion.
But Barry did come back. So let's talk about it.
Okay. So during Infinite Crisis, Barry is still inside the Speed Force, and he entered into the regular universe with the other speedsters to combat Superboy Prime, dragging him into the Speed Force in an attempt to stop his destructive rampage. But then he finally came back to life fully in Final Crisis. Ashley, what is Final Crisis? Because I love asking you about crises.
I hate asking me about crises.
I mean, answering.
Yeah. I love asking you about crises. Final Crisis is when Darkseid comes to Earth and he kills Superman.
No, Batman.
He kills Batman.
Superman lives for that one.
I was thinking about the cover, and for some reason, I thought it was Batman holding Superman.
In fact, it's in that storyline, Superman is the only one to actually not die.
I'm sorry. It's very late when we're recording this, and I've lost my mind.
The entire multiverse actually dies.
You know, it's now colloquially known as the second death of Superman.
Yep.
We'll get to it when we finally get to our Superman the modern age
that's right.
episode. Sorry. He shoots Batman and Batman goes back in time and doesn't die.
That's right. Okay, so Barry Allen is seen chasing the bullet fired backward through time that killed Orion, the son of Darkseid, and being chased by the Black Racer, which is basically the Grim Reaper of the New Gods.
But if he was a skier.
Yep. He simply says to Wally West and Jay Garrick, run. And Barry and Wally and Jay accelerate 1 month into the future because they run so fast, only to find that Darkseid has conquered the world. Barry explains his plan. He says that since they had led the Black Racer to the present, Barry would lead him to Darkseid and let the Black Racer claim Darkseid's soul. But Barry wanted to do it alone, but Wally insisted on going with him. So the two Flashes teamed up, ran so fast, they ran past Superman, who naturally was surprised to see Barry in the real world, and they vibrated through Darkseid, allowing the Black Racer to remove Darkseid's essence from Dan Turpin.
It's actually a really cool moment.
It's a of all the ways to bring Barry back, it's a neat moment.
Not a bad one,
it's a neat beat to bring Barry back.
Although if I can give Barry a punch-up note, instead of saying run, I would recommend fly, you fools.
And the lawyers for J.R.R. Tolkien are on the line right now.
That's a joke for like 5 people.
Then Flash Reborn happens, and the full details of his resurrection are revealed. Now, Barry Allen and Wally found the Black Flash apparently dead. Ashley, what is the Black Flash?
What is the Black Flash?
Yeah.
It's like What If Death, but Speedster, though.
Yeah, it's the Grim Reaper of Flashes.
Yeah.
After the Black Flash was dead, they find out that Barry becomes the new Black Flash.
I actually think that's cool.
And he realizes that his presence could damage or kill other innocents, and Barry decides to go back into the Speed Force. There he finds Professor Zoom, Eobard Thawne, who reveals...
Sure it's not Hunter Zolomon.
It is Eobard Thawne, who reveals the depth of his plan. After Barry briefly aided Kid Flash against Superboy Prime in Infinite Crisis, Thawne was able to send a subliminal pulse into the Speed Force to draw back what was left of Barry's self-awareness. This led to the hero coming out of the Speed Force in Final Crisis. And afterward, Zoom transformed himself into a new kind of speedster and created his own negative Speed Force to contaminate Barry and other heroic speedsters. Of course, all the speedsters teamed up. They eventually beat Zoom, and Wally, who had become the full Flash during Barry's death, basically just stays the Flash again, a la Green Arrow situation with Oliver and Connor Hawke.
Yeah, I think it works better for the Arrows than for the Flashes.
Actually, to be honest with you, I love Wally's costume post Flash Reborn because they give him the Flash TV costume.
Yes, they do.
And it looks awesome. I love it. I think it's actually my favorite. It's my favorite Wally Flash costume.
Interesting.
Yep. So this is also the storyline where they retcon Barry's mother being killed by Zoom and the police blaming on his father. And before this, in the Silver Age, his parents were actually just alive. And also, Flash Reborn de-ages Iris and Barry by 20 years somehow, and it's never explained because Iris had gray hair in the 90s.
Because comics!
Yep. Barry just goes back to being the Flash during his next series and just does the same old superhero-y stuff until Ashley's favorite event, Flashpoint.
Can I explain this one?
Ashley, what's Flashpoint?
Barry Allen missed his mom. So he ran back in time, reset the universe, everybody got lines on their costumes, and he set a bad precedent for time travel.
Yep. Basically, he creates an alternate world because he wanted to save his mommy. And in this alternate world, Thomas Wayne is Batman, and we did a whole episode of it with Sam Basher a couple years back. Go listen to it.
Yeah.
So Barry makes a whole new timeline. And then eventually this whole new timeline is ignored in about 5 years.
Yeah.
Barry is single in this timeline. Iris has no idea he's the Flash. But he does get a new Wally West who is African American. And then soon the white Wally West comes back. He's de-aged. And somehow he's been lost in the Speed Force for about 10 years. But however, Barry cannot remember his pre-Flashpoint life. He can't remember people like Jay Garrick, and the detail of his feuds with Reverse Flash and Eobard Thawne, he can't really remember. However, Wally can remember everything from before the Flashpoint timeline break. Later, Eobard Thawne does show up. He attacks Iris, and Wallace is who they're calling the African-American Wally West. And Iris gets glimpses of her pre-Flashpoint life with Barry, learns the identity of the Flash. That's how she learns in this timeline. And then during this, Barry and Iris learn that they were married in the previous timeline.
And had terrible, terrible children.
Yep. Because of this, knowing that from Thawne that her entire life has been drastically altered and that Barry is directly responsible for it because of his time-traveling actions, Iris now distrusts Barry.
Good move, Iris.
And soon, Wally, White Wally, learns that in the previous timeline, he had 2 children. And he decides that he must break the Speed Force because he believes, since they were both speedsters, that his children must be inside the Speed Force. Barry tries to outrace him to stop him, and Wally beats him. Wally proves himself to be the fastest man alive.
Well,
damn straight.
About friggin' time. But also the fact that both characters now, because the Speed Force is a Mark Waid, Wally West invention. But, since both characters have had access to it for quite some time in continuity, the fact that Wally's the only one who has all of the memories, I think, if you want to take it this way, is a canon nod to the fact that he has a deeper connection to the Speed Force as well.
Well, it is actually said, and this is the most recent Flash storyline called Flash, where it's really good, written by Joshua Williamson. It brings back Impulse. It is actually said that the reason why Wally outruns him is because Wally has a spiritual connection to the Speed Force, whereas Barry's is a scientific connection, which is well proven because, again, Wally West was the speedster that discovered the Speed Force.
Yes, so he would regard it maybe as something closer to religious.
And he's not a scientist.
There's also there's a moment where Barry says, "You are Wally West and you're the fastest man alive." It's a truly beautiful moment. Like, it's a good story.
It's great.
Good job, Josh.
It's actually a really
great
good
story.
The issue after that happens, the issue starts out with, "I'm Barry Allen, and I am not the fastest man alive."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's cool.
But eventually after that is revealed that Wally's children being in the Speed Force are actually a trick by Hunter Zolomon, who is Zoom, not Eobard Thawne, to unleash new forces like the Speed Force into the world, including the Sage Force and the Still Force. And you know what? We'll explain all of those some other time because that's currently happening in Flash comic books right now as of the time of this recording. And that is the entire history of Barry Allen.
Woo! Good job.
Yeah. And now let's go into the recommended reading.
And the recommended reading is the part of the podcast where Professor Jason is going to recommend a bunch of great Barry Allen stories for you to read. You can find these and all of our past recommended readings at geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading. You click on the widget, you buy the book. A little bit of support comes back to the Mind University so that we can keep Barry Allen running on that treadmill in the basement and keep the lights on.
Now, the first one I'm going to suggest is not even a Barry Allen story.
What, Jason? How could you do this?
But it's called The Return of Barry Allen.
Oh, this is a good story.
This storyline happens very early into Mark Waid's Flash run with Wally West, and it's very soon after Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Barry Allen shows up alive, and Wally freaks out.
Yeah.
Because he's like, what? So Barry Allen's in the story, but I'm not going to give you the twist of how Barry Allen's in the story, and it's a really good Barry Allen story.
Cool.
The next one is Flash Rebirth Volume 1 by Joshua Williamson. This is one of the most recent Volume 1s of The Flash. It's basically where a thunderstorm shows up in Central City, but it's a thunderstorm made of a Speed Force energy, and it creates a whole bunch of new speedsters.
Yeah.
And the last trade I'm going to give you is actually a trade that's not even out yet at the time of this recording, but it's so good. It's called The Flash War, and you can go over there and you can pre-order it. But if you're listening to this in the future, this is one of the best. Flash War is so good, and it is the best story arc of Joshua Williamson's run. I don't think you need to know that much about the run to be able to read it. Flash War is going to go down in, I think, the Flash canons as equal to Mark Waid Flash stories.
I mean, I'll say it right here, and people can agree with me or disagree with me as they will, of course. I think this is the best contemporary Flash story.
Sure.
I think it's, really quite good.
It's really, really good. But I wonder if the reason, again, we're kind of biased. I wonder if the reason why we consider it to be so good is because it's mainly a Wally story.
Probably.
Yep. And he beats Barry. Okay. Now we're going to go into the discussion. And the discussion is going to be with a Flash fan, Flash Fact, friends. That didn't work. The host and the owner of Majorspoilers.com and the creator of several awesome podcasts, including the Legion Clubhouse, Top 5, and Critical Hit. Flash fan from the future, welcome to the podcast for this discussion, Stephen Schleicher. And hello, Stephen, and welcome back to Geek History Lesson.
Well, thanks for having me back, Jason.
No problem, man. I've been waiting for the episode that we could pull you back in here. Now, you're a Flash expert, or you're a big fan of the Flash. When did your love for the Flash start?
Actually, it kind of got to me through Impulse. When Impulse came out, just the Humberto Ramos covers just grabbed me, and I started reading that. And I'm like, oh, this ties into the Flash. Maybe I should go read that. And then as time progressed, I slowly started to make my way back through the entire history of the Flash run. And certainly some of the big phone book catalog reprints of the early Flash stuff. 600 pages for $19. Yeah, I'm going to buy that and read all that. So yeah, it really started probably in the mid 90s. And then just has escalated from there.
So you've read a lot of the Silver Age Barry Allen stories then?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Wow. And does anything stand out to you from them or about those type of stories with Barry Allen?
I think the thing that's kind of amazing about the Silver Age Flash is that they try to inject as much science as they can into his stories, where they're like, here's how Barry can spin his arms as fast as, a tornado. And here's what a tornado can do and why it blows air this way and does these things. So they really try to inject science, but it's like not really good science, which kind of makes it funny in hindsight. But at the time, if you're a young kid and you're reading this and you're like, oh, wow, science is cool, then maybe that prompts you to go and study science somewhere else. But I always was surprised how they try to inject some kind of a pseudoscience into explaining how his powers work. Well,
the pseudoscience actually fits into the legacy of the Flash, because when you go back to the Golden Age and Jay Garrick, he got his powers from hard water.
Right. So, yeah, what the heck is hard water?
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of fumes are you smelling there, Jay?
How does that give you super speed? Now, do you consider yourself to be a fan of Barry Allen?
I like Barry Allen for what he represents and what he did to the comic industry. He literally
started the Silver Age.
Literally and figuratively saved comics, because if you're talking about the Silver Age and how DC really only had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and nothing else, Gardner Fox coming in and say, what if we reboot and bring in Barry Allen? That really saved the superhero comics, because at the time, everyone was so focused on romance comics and Western and horror comics. And of course, you had the 10-cent plague starting to creep into all of that and limit what people could do. So Barry coming in as the Flash and a reboot of a classic character kind of saved the superhero comic industry. And then, of course, the Crisis on Infinite Earths, he saves the entire DC universe once again. So from those aspects, Barry is really kind of cool. He's also very milquetoast.
That's a good way to describe him.
He's not somebody that just really stands out as he always does the right thing, but there's nothing really special about him. He's kind of dry and dull and boring to me. But when it comes time to step up, he's there and ready to do it. So from that aspect, I can really appreciate the point of having Barry Allen and what he does.
And that's an aspect, too, that we talk a lot about in the lesson, that there is not a lot of depth to Barry Allen, even after they bring him back to life for his basic second comic book career. He is just basically follow the rules guy and sometimes stiff.
And that works, especially when you put him with other characters like Kyle Rayner or Hal Jordan or Green Arrow or Batman, people who are willing to break those rules and bend those rules. Then he becomes kind of that sounding board of, hey, wait a minute, guys, should we really be doing this? Is this the right way to do it? Or, why are you guys messing around talking all the time when I can just run over there and come back really fast?
Now, what do you see as the big differences between Barry Allen and Wally West? Now, the reason I ask about Wally West is because these two gentlemen, more so than any other speedsters, more so than any other Flashes, basically wore the same costume, and they also have the closest connection. Right. So what do you see as the two differences between the Wally West as the hero Flash and Barry Allen, the hero Flash?
So Barry is doing it because, to borrow from another company, he's been given a great responsibility, and he's doing it, right? Wally is doing it because he's honoring that person that mentored him all of those years as Kid Flash. And so there's really very different reasons for that. And that's one of the reasons why I think Wally West is more of an interesting character, especially during the Wade run and the stuff during the 90s, where it really came down for Wally as family is important. Love is important. These are the things, these personal connections are what drives us. Barry is just there doing what needs to be done because he's been given this power.
Now, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. Barry Allen had a great death in
Ultimate
Crisis.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, the Ultimate Sacrifice. He saved the multiverse in Crisis on Infinite Earths. He saved all of existence, and he died. And it was a death that was talked about for the next 23 years. Basically, people still reference the time that Barry Allen saved everything. So, 23 years later, Barry Allen is brought back in Final Crisis. And then the reasoning for why he's brought back is explained in Flash Rebirth by Jeff Johns. Should Barry Allen have been brought back to life? In the fictional DC Comics history, of course.
So that's a really good question and a really tough question, right? It's from a writer standpoint or from a fan standpoint, there are many justifications for, yes, he needed to come back. From a story standpoint, I think him coming back actually detracts from his sacrifice. And really, that's the problem with any comic book death and resurrection, right? They make this ultimate sacrifice. And then, a year, 2 years, or in the case of Barry Allen, 20 years later, he's back. And everyone's like, okay, let's move on with the rest of our lives. So from a universe standpoint of what DC Comics is, I would say no. But from a writer-fan standpoint, I can see why people are like, yes, we need Barry to come back. Because he's that Barry we knew growing up. He was the Barry that we read, and he made that big monumental impact in Crisis on Infinite Earth. So, yeah, why wouldn't we want to tell additional stories about him?
But do you see anything problematic with the fact that because they waited basically a generation?
Almost 2 generations, right?
Almost 2 generations of fans who have no idea who Barry Allen is, besides the fact that, he's the Flash that died. And then especially when you consider the Justice League animated cartoon, it's Wally West in that cartoon. And that, until the Flash TV show, was probably the biggest exposure that the Flash had ever had outside of the comic book audience. That, again, to me, the only people that you're bringing Barry Allen back for are the people that were reading comic books back in 1985. And there's 2 generations of comic book readers that don't care about Barry Allen.
Oh, yeah, because when Barry Allen came back, I'll be honest, my interest in reading Flash stories really kind of waned because Wally West is my Flash. It's always that first Flash that you connect with. But if you kind of look at the bigger picture, obviously someone like Jeff Johns, now I can't speak for Jeff Johns, and so I'm just putting what I see into kind of his sphere. But this is the Flash he grew up on. This is the Flash that he loves. So when given the opportunity, yeah, he wants to write Barry Allen, not any other Flash character that has tried to fill those boots. Also, from another standpoint, you could look at the business side, and is DC trying to cater to old fans? Are they trying to bring old fans back? And certainly some things that were going on at DC at the time may indicate that a large number of older fans had drifted away. So bringing Barry back might have also been another way to say, hey, older readers, we want to bring you back into the fold. But the biggest problem is, like you said, same way with a Green Lantern, when you have John Stewart on the Justice League International and you have Wally West in Justice League International, switching them out to people that don't have any connection to these characters really seems like a bad move.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I said in the episode previously that I admitted my bias that Wally West is my Flash as well. And I do have problems with Barry Allen coming back to life, especially when you consider the CW Flash TV show that's on the air right now, where he is Barry Allen, but he acts more like Wally West than Barry Allen.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And if you go and look at articles that we've written over at majorspoilers.com, especially into that first season.
And please, everyone, go look at those articles.
Or if you listen to our other show, the Flashback podcast, where we take a look at each episode of the show, we make mention that, this characteristic or this power that Barry has in the TV show is actually a Wally power. These are things that were introduced by
Mark Waid?
characters, by Mark Waid in the 90s. So that, also kind of mixes it up. But then, I love the relationship that Wally has with Linda, but the Barry Iris relationship, I think, is even stronger and more powerful when you go back and read some of those old comics. Yes, he's always trying to pull I guess I'm just slow Barry, and then you finally realize that Iris is like, no, I've known this all along.
Well, she heard him say his identity on the night of their honeymoon in his sleep. So,
but then the whole idea that, they want to start a family and he wants to protect her and he's going to take her into the future to live out their lives and they have kids. I mean, that's fantastic. That's fantastic storytelling that you could only do with Barry Allen. It's not something that you can do with Wally West. So for Barry to be the TV character in the show, I think is a great idea.
Okay.
In the comics, maybe not so much.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because you touched on it a little bit. What are the Flash stories that you can tell with Barry that you can't tell with the other Flashes?
Well, obviously, the biggest one is the Flash of Two Worlds, right? That is probably the biggest one that you can tell. And then now with this new season that's here or about to arrive on the CW, we have we have his kid showing up. Granted, it's XS and not one of the Tornado Twins, but you still have this legacy of, oh, here's one of your family members from the future that's here today. And that's, again, another story you really can't tell with Wally, but you certainly can tell with Barry. And I think that that's fantastic as well. Then you've got, really you can't do any of the villains that are known Flash Rogues Gallery villains without them being Barry Allen, because by the time Wally inherits them, his real push is let's do reform. Let's become friends. Let's see if we can turn you away from a life of crime to, being someone who's different. And we saw what happened with that with Legends of Tomorrow. But Barry is just like, you're a bad guy. I've got to do something about you. And so that allows you to bring in all of those classic villains again and again and again, or one time in the TV show, to tell those stories.
That's an interesting perspective. I never thought about that. Final question for you, Stephen.
Okay.
Why do you love the Flash? What is it about that superhero? Maybe their powers, their stories, their style. What about the Flash speaks to you? Because I know that you're also a big Batman guy as well. So what is it about the Flash?
So here's something that a lot of people probably wouldn't realize, and this is a really weird connection for people to probably to know. When I was growing up in middle school and in high school, I was a runner. I was long distance runners, half mile up to 2 mile,
like cross country and stuff. Yeah.
Cross country track, team events, those kinds of things. So running kind of is in my blood, and I really enjoyed the heck out of that. So when you find a character whose deal is speed, then that's something that kind of triggers with me. And so even though I'm a big Batman fan, I like the Flash better. And I think it all has to go back to the fact that he's a runner and I used to be a runner. And man, what kind of weird wish fulfillment fantasies can you have when you're like, man, if I could run as fast as the Flash, what could I do? Those kinds of things. So that's probably why Flash, came on my radar and stuck around. But then as you start to read the stories, it just grows on you. Suddenly you realize that depending on which version of the Flash you're reading, and certainly Barry Allen has a lot of really good, deep stories that go on, you suddenly grow this attachment and this fondness for all things Flash.
Nice. I really, really like that. And it gives us some deep insight into your mind. That's really nice, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks.
Really quickly, tell our listeners where they can find you. If they don't know about Majorspoilers.com, please tell them about all the awesome things and your Patreon and everything you got going on over there.
Yeah, so if you want to find me on Twitter, @Majorspoilers, basically everything is Major Spoilers. So you can go over to our website, Majorspoilers.com, where we have news, reviews, podcast. The Major Spoilers podcast is a fun one. Actually, Victoria Robinson sits in quite a bit on that show, and so you can hear more of her thoughts on that show. We have so many podcasts in the Major Spoilers podcast network. You can just search for Major Spoilers on your Apple Podcasts, and you can find them there. And if you enjoy what you hear, you can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Major Spoilers for more information, including how you can access the Flashback podcast,
which I believe is only on the Patreon, correct?
Yep, that's only a Patreon. Yeah. That's a Patreon exclusive.
To all of our listeners that are out there right now, many of them have said to us that they listen to our podcast and that they made a podcast because of Geek History Lesson. I'm going to tell all our listeners that the only reason I made a podcast was because I was such a big fan of the Major Spoilers podcast.
Aww.
Which I've been listening to, I think, now 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
I think I started like in 2008 because I had a job at the time where I was driving a lot, and I was like, where are some podcasts? And that's how I found it. So it's awesome that now you are a guest on my podcast. It's like, it blows my nerd mind. So thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us.
Run, Barry, run.
And thank you so much for Stephen for joining the podcast. I love having Stephen on the podcast every time. And again, Majorspoilers.com is where you can find everything Stephen.
Heck yeah.
All right, now we're going to go into the teaching tweet.
Where in 140 characters, because we old school, Professor Jason is going to give you his thoughts on Barry Allen. And you can find this at GHL Podcast.
The greatest thing that Barry Allen did was to die and provide Wally West an example to aspire to as he became the fastest man ever. The real Flash, hashtag Wally yes. And now we're going to move into the final section of the podcast, the honor roll. What is that, Ashley?
Well, the honor roll is where if you head on over to, I think it's called Apple Podcasts now.
Or iTunes, whatever.
They're fancy. And you leave us a 5-star review to help some other cool people find us. We'll read whatever you write.
Yes, and it helps us in the iTunes search, Apple Podcast search algorithm. The first person that's going to join the honor roll and get 5 stars himself is Alexis Odd 328, saying these guys are great.
Thank you.
Jason and Ashley are some of the best and funniest hosts on any podcast that I've ever listened to. They get through the lessons very well and were even able to make me understand the Legion of Superheroes. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are awesome.
You're awesome.
The next person that's getting 5 stars in the honor roll is Q Meets World, who says comics for the comic illiterate. I have been listening to GHL for a while now, and I finally feel like I get comics. For whatever reason, my brain doesn't process comics well, so this gives me the opportunity to learn all the amazing comic stories from 2 amazing teachers.
Oh, I'm glad we can help. That's so sweet.
And the last person that joined the honor roll is A.L. Reed, who says Geek History Performance Review. I'm excited to read this one.
Okay.
Professors Ashley and Jason are always entertaining, informative, well-prepared, and insightful. I'm a newer listener, but felt immediately connected with and invested in the professors and their various methods of storytelling. Their lessons stand up to time and are worth going back through if you play catch-up. I have a feeling they're going to be really busy writing for Marvel or DC in upcoming years, so we as listeners need to enjoy their lessons while they have time to teach them. Additionally, their comic Jupiter Jet is excellent. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
P.S. Ashley, I don't care what Jason says. Batman the Animated Series is a perfectly acceptable answer to any meet-cute inquiry.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've ever questioned you, but okay.
But I think sometimes you're like, I bet it's Batman the Animated Series.
And then he has a P.S. to me. P.S. Jason, I don't care what Ashley says. Forcing people to listen to insert dial-up internet sounds of the 90s here is hilarious. Every time.
I forgot about that.
So thank you, A.L. Reed.
Thank you so much.
Q Meets World. And thank you, Alexis Odd 328. You now get a key to the Teacher's Lounge because you are on the honor roll. And whatever you do, do not touch Mr. Globowski's Time magazines.
What did Mr. Globowski teach again?
Ancient Egyptian algebra.
Oh, I thought you were going to say ancient aliens.
Nope. So go over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. While you're over there, subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, listen to us there, listen to us on Stitcher, listen to us on iHeartRadio. Anywhere you can find podcasts and put them in your ear holes, you're going to find us, subscribe, download, do that stuff. You can also suggest episodes like Barry Allen, like Grodd Frankenstein.
What a great
Where
name.
can they do that, Ashley?
You can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's like 1,000 ways to contact us in all of those places.
And don't forget, we have a Kickstarter going right now, sciencecomicbook.com. It is our new 80-page graphic novel about the most advanced science school. There aren't speedsters in there, but these scientists and these young kids in this book can, I guarantee you, they could build a speedster. They can do it.
Oh, for sure.
So go over there and support our original comic book. Thank you so much. You can follow me on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin. Follow Ashley on Twitter at Ashley V. Robinson. And follow the podcast at GHL Podcast. And lastly, don't forget about our patreon.com/Jawiin. That's the only place you can listen to our bonus podcast, Geek History Lesson Extra. And this one is going to be talking about what if Wally West was still currently the main Flash. We're going to talk about a weird alternate world where Barry Allen never came back from the dead and what we think Wally would be up to right now.
Wow.
Yes. All right. So hashtag stick around. Final section of the podcast. Make sure you still stuck through all our plugs.
Yeah, baby.
Ashley, please stop copyright infringing the hello from the Magic Tavern. How would you describe Barry Allen's character from this podcast? What have you learned about Barry Allen's character? How would you describe Barry Allen's character?
Stick in the mud.
Yep.
Great hero. Should have stayed dead.
That's good. Okay.
I don't know, man. Barry Allen's kind of like got a bummer personality until he got Wally's personality. I think narratively, I understand why you do it. I like the idea that he's slow, that he's like a boring dude. I think that's a great cover, and because it's antithetical to the Flash.
Yeah.
But like, do I want to hang out with Barry Allen at a party?
No one does.
No.
No one does.
No.
All right.
Absolutely not.
Works for me. All right. Thank you so much for listening to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Lightning Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson, and Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class?
My name is Jason Inman, and I am the fastest podcast host alive.